Hey, thanks everybody for tuning in to episode 3 of One Bottle Each, where my guest and I choose a bottle apiece for us to taste. My guest in this episode is my friend Wanda Mann. She writes winewithwanda.com and has been writing about wine for more than a decade. Welcome, Wanda.
Thank you. I'm so flattered that you invited me. Congratulations on this new venture.
Well, thank you very much. How are you? And I'm curious, how did you get into wine and writing about wine?
Well, I'm doing well, given that everything that's going on in the world, staying healthy is the priority. So I feel grateful for that. And I guess I got into wine a few ways. My dad was a professional chef and he was classically trained. And he actually bought me my first bottle of wine when I was 16.
Huh?
And what really prompted him to do that is that when I was 16, I went to live in Barcelona for a year. And he knew that I would be drinking wine there as part of the culture. And I think he just wanted me to not be some stereotypical a teenager who was just drinking to get drunk. Like he wanted me to have an appreciation and reverence for it. And later on in my work career as an events planner, I ended up actually planning a lot of wine tastings in one of my jobs. So that was really the first time I got to meet winemakers and really started hearing the language of wine. And then through that experience, one of the importers invited me to a lunch outside of my job. And that was kind of what the aha moment where I was hooked, listening to this winemaker talk about barrels and using terms like malolactic that I'd never heard of. And I was like, oh my God, this is a whole new world. So that was about 12 years ago that I really officially got the wine bug.
Yes, that sucked you in. And so then from there, I'm curious what I don't know if shifted is the right word, but you certainly have a bit of a focus on Italian wines. I know you travel to Italy quite a bit during normal times, and you have definitely a joie de vivre about Italy and Italian wine. So how did that come about?
It's interesting because when I started this, I thought Spain would be more of my focus area, given that I speak Spanish and I studied in Spain for 2 years. Um, Part of it is being in New York City, the Italian wines are such a strong presence. As you know, all of the trade tastings that we go to, often the Italian winemakers are here. So I just found myself more and more being welcomed into this world. And I just found it actually a very comfortable and non-threatening way to learn about wine. I just found the producers always very open. Um, there was no intimidation factor. So before I knew it, I was kind of known as, yes, oh, Wanda, she only writes about Italian wines, which is not true, but I do write a lot about Italian.
Yeah, no, I know it's not all, but definitely I do think of Italian wine when I think of you.
Yeah.
So therefore, I was a little bit surprised when you selected a Spanish wine.
Yes.
I was totally expecting an Italian wine. So tell us about the wine that you selected.
Sure. Where the wine I picked is De Castilla Garnacha 2014 from Old Vines. I have a very sentimental and special connection to this wine. Um, Somontano, everyone knows Rioja, when they think of Spanish wines, Ribera del Duero, a little bit of Rias Baixas. No one knows Somontano. And it's such an interesting region in the northeast of Spain at the foot of the Pyrenees, shares a natural border with France. And this vineyard has Garnacha vines that are about 100 years old. And they're, these gnarly, old looking vines that have been working really hard, but just produce such beautiful fruit. And the vineyard is just almost this mystical place. Se Castilla is kind of the short in Latin for seven castles. So during the Roman times, there were actually seven castles that surrounded this high altitude vineyard. So there's like this energy there. The first time I went there, I said, oh, this is a once in a lifetime experience that I'll treasure. And I've been blessed to go 3 times now to Se
That's
Castilla.
incredible.
So
So
it's just,
I haven't been to that region, but what one of the things I think about when I think about it is the fact that unlike some of the other regions that you mentioned, they're not so tied down to specific varieties that are always traditional. That they grow some traditional varieties and then they grow international varieties. It's a very cosmopolitan region for
it
a
is.
European country.
It is. They're really blessed with the terroir and a climate where they can grow a lot of things really well. There's definitely a French influence because during phylloxera, a lot of the French
Yeah.
winemakers crossed over the mountains and settled in Somontano. So they've been growing Merlot there for a really long time because of the French migration. So I just love this wine.
There's there's an intensity here on the palate.
It's intense.
Yeah, there's some red fruit up front, but then I get a lot of black fruit on the middle and on the finish. That really I really like a lot. What really speaks to you about this one?
Well, I think I always love a wine where there's that feeling of if I was there during the harvest and I touched that grape and tasted it, that essence of that flavor of that grape off the vine is still in the glass. And I feel that with this wine. I think the winemaker Jose Ferrer, he's very, very judicious in his use of oak. So there's a little tiny bit of spice in here, but I don't find it oaky and overwhelming. There is an intensity, but there's still a juiciness and it's approachable that I really love.
Yeah, the intensity is certainly the fruit. The oak treatment, like you said, it's as people like to say, it's a kiss of oak,
Mhm. It is.
or a little bit of a spice. It's not the story. It's not the lead story at all.
Yeah. So,
So
when we talk about a wine having a sense of place, for me, this wine really, it transports me back to say Castilla.
I was just going to use that word. I was going to say you seem like you're being transported back there during the Zoom call.
Yes.
Which, if we could only do that.
Only. It's not the easiest wine to find in the US, unfortunately, but it is out there if you look for it. It's about $39.99 retail.
Okay.
But I've tasted older vintages. This is also wine that ages really well. The 2012 actually won Best Red Wine in Spain at the International Wine Challenge.
Okay.
So it is a wine with a very good reputation in Spain and other parts of Europe.
It, it's
So
a it's a beautiful wine, and what I would tell people who are listening to us is that they might think of a lot of Granacha at a much lower price, which there is quite a bit of in Spain, and there's some really fine examples, but this one really steps it up in terms of the elegance and just in terms of the complexity that's going on here.
it is. Yeah, to me, it strikes that sweet spot. I always say I love a wine that I can share with my friends who know nothing about wine, and it'll just go, "Oh, that's delicious." And then when I share with someone like you pick up the nuance, the finesse. You understand what it takes to make a wine where someone says, "Oh, that's delicious." It's not so easy.
No, no, it's not. I like to say that the first part, to appeal to friends who just want to have a drink,
Hmm.
it's got curb appeal.
Yes.
It's a little shiny in a way. It's got that upfront fruit that really speaks, I think, to the novice or to just a casual wine drinker. But then, yeah, so much depth of palate and such a long finish. Really awesome. Thank you for picking that.
Thank you for allowing me to share it with you. It's, you
Yeah,
know,
I've had it before, but not in probably 5 or 6 years. So I'm happy to revisit it.
good, good, good.
Yeah. So the wine I selected is we're moving over, taking the plane and heading out to Sonoma County, Dry
And you
Creek
surprised
Valley.
me.
What's
This,
that?
you surprised me with this one.
Uh, Pedroncelli Sangiovese. So what were you expecting me to?
Well, I know you're a big fan of Pedroncelli, so I wasn't surprised. I assumed that, I was like, oh, he sent to Zinfandel. I didn't know they made Sangiovese. I had no idea.
Yeah, so the Pedroncellis, well, they're dear friends, but the first time I went to Sonoma County, it was to visit Pedroncelli. I'd had their mother clone Zinfandel in the early '90s, and it was the first Zinfandel I ever had. So the next time I go to California, I'm going there. I
Okay.
didn't know where there was Dry Creek Valley, but I said I'm going there. I went there and subsequently became a fan of across the board their portfolio, and they've also become good friends of mine. And I picked the Sangiovese specifically for you because I do think of Italian wine, and I do think that this is an excellent example of Sangiovese. Um, I think one of the very best in California, and for a very reasonable price. So was what I thought of. I wanted you to taste.
No, I'm very intrigued. I always get excited when I see Sangiovese in other parts of the world because,
Yeah,
as you know, I'm very entrenched in the Italian expressions of Sangiovese. Mm. Concentrated but graceful.
yeah. It's got
Yeah,
a bit of a lightness about it, and it's but still has good depth. Lots of red fruit.
lots of red.
So what I've said about this wine to people, and one of the reasons I selected it is I think that it could stand up next to a Chianti Classico, and it's clearly Sangiovese. There's a lot of examples from California, less now than there were, but they don't necessarily taste like the grape. They're sort of, um, you know, they're too rich, too ripe. They're not true to the grape, and they don't have the fine acidity that I find in this wine.
Is this something they've been producing for a long time?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how many years, but yes, they have been producing it consistently. They have, they have wines that are made in a large number that are out in the market, like their Zinfandel and Sauvignon Blanc and things like that, and Cabernets. But then they have a bunch of smaller production wines as well that don't see, in some cases, as wide distribution, or in some cases, or winery or wine club exclusives. But I think if this is one of their sort of hidden wines, that if you get to know the winery, you get to know it. It's $18
Wow.
suggested retail. So if you find it on the shelf, it's going to be a couple bucks less than that even. So I
Yeah.
think Tuesday night with a slice of pizza for $18.
Yeah, and it's such a great story behind it. It's always interesting when these grapes make their way, kind of like immigrants traveling to a new land, and to see
Yeah,
how they
and
adapt.
they're celebrating this year, the Pedroncelli's their 93rd anniversary as a winery. So they're steeped in the tradition of Sonoma County, and when I think of Sonoma County, they're the first I think of.
Nice. Yeah, I really like it. There's a freshness to it. It's also a little bit of an herbal quality that I always love in a red wine.
Yeah,
It's not a fruit bomb. There's some
no,
interesting
not at all. Yeah,
happening.
some savory herbs. I get a
Yeah.
little thyme on it.
Hmm. So that I enjoy.
Me
Yeah,
too.
perfect for pizza, but even like with
You're
I
gonna
don't know,
order a
the
pizza after
lamb
this.
chop. I kind of want a lamb chop too.
Oh, lamb chop. Okay, yeah. Is there such a thing as lamb chop pizza, do you think?
I don't know.
But somebody will make it for you
Someone will make it.
for the right price.
Exactly.
Wanda, thank you so much for
Oh,
being
thank
on here
you.
with me. I really appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers.
And
Hopefully we see each other soon.
I hope so in real life.